Hi everyone, this is going to be yet another video talking about everything wrong with It Happened to Nancy, and as you guys can see from the title this will have, you know what this subject will be about, so if that thing is like legitimately triggering or upsetting to you, I have almost 300 other videos you guys can watch instead that don't have content that might upset survivors of SA or similar trauma, or if you just don't want to deal with a topic such as this. And so this is going to cover two things on my list, which now numbers and is capped in at number 200 of everything wrong with this book, because they're just such big, egregious, blatantly, patently, ridiculous, unrealistic things. They need their entire separate video and blog post to discuss everything that really is wrong with them. And this is number 172 and 173, and so it's why the date rape and its aftermath in this book make no sense. Seriously, Dr. Fraud had no personal experience with anything she wrote about. The list is endless, cults, eating disorders, drugs, date rape, HIV, AIDS, gangs, just teen pregnancy, just about anything, every single thing she wrote about, and couldn't even be arsed to do real research. She just relied on the tried and true tradition of fear-mongering Mormon propaganda. And though it's true no two people experience trauma or assault in the same way, the scenarios depicted in this book just don't come across as realistic or well-researched, and I will read some passages to illustrate that. I already established how implausible Nancy and Colin's relationship is, and how jaw-droppingly unbelievable it is that she would invite a guy she barely knows over to her home alone, accept alcohol from him, and lock both doors, and even find that funny. Only people who feel they have something to hide sneak around to date someone, and no one should rush into a serious relationship immediately. Even couples in the pre-pill era who are going to, oh, we've only been dating for a few days and we want to get married now, particularly during World War II, or just after the war, they would date for a few weeks, a few months. It wasn't years long courtships like today, because, obviously scandal if you got pregnant out of wedlock or you were caught having sex, you had to be married to respectably live together and have children. And even those people weren't, oh, we're already super serious, we're sending love letters already after all of 3 days, and I'm having letters or love notes and flowers delivered to my girlfriend's school or her workplace, things like that. Dr. Fraud had no concept of the real world at all. Nancy goes to open the door for him to leave at exactly midnight, which she made him promise to do. And the next thing she knows, Colin has picked her up and is carrying her away. Did she open the door before this? Did he pick her up from behind? Did the door remain open? And thus people could have heard the screams and shouting and stuff. Why does Colin feel the need to wait until that very moment to turn from from Dr. Hyde into Mr. Jekyll? Did Dr. Fraud not realize you don't need to have sex on a bed? Who doesn't know that? Colin could have easily raped Nancy while he was giving her a kissing lesson on the floor. Most rapists don't feel the need to carry their victims off to a bed when they can easily overpower them and commit the assault in the place they already are. And why Mommykins' bed? Was that the closest bedroom in that swanky apartment? And most women, girls being raped, they're not going to think, oh, he dropped me onto my mommy's bed with a nice flowery comforter. You're not thinking about the specifics, just someone is trying to rape me. What the hell? Seriously. Why does Nancy immediately panic about mortal sins instead of focusing on trying to fight him off and telling him to stop? And she does obviously do those other things, but her main focus is oh, it's a mortal sin, fornication on my sweet mommy's bed. Oh, this is terrible. I'm gonna sin. I'm going to hell. It's against Catholicism, all this Catholic guilt exaggeration which she had no experience with, or have the presence of mind to be concerned about doing this on her darling Mommykins' bed. Who cares? Someone's trying to rape you. It could be on the street outside or on the terrace or in the backyard. Why does it matter the particular location? When I was being run over by a car, all these disconnected thoughts were rattling around in my brain like crazed pinballs, and I was in pure panic mode the entire time I was pinned under that big black Chrysler. I could only think about what was happening to me in the here and now, not the specific circumstances. And again, Dr. Fraud knew jack about Catholicism. She only had a vague awareness of stereotypes and generalities, and really amped up the concept of Catholic guilt. It seems more like a parody, like stereotype, than anything actual Catholics who feel like guilt over whatever would really be like experiencing. It's like she heard the song It's a Sin by the Pet Shop Boys, an 80s classic, once and decided that was all she needed to know. Or maybe she was projecting her own Mormon guilt. What survivor of any type of trauma, especially rape, has the presence of mind and desire to journal about it in detail 1 hour later, or just a little bit over an hour, because, she does the time and date for every single entry. Colin starts carrying her off at the stroke of midnight, and the next entry in the journal is 1:30 a.m. So they struggled for a while. Who knows how long it took to rape her? So it's like 1 hour or just a little bit over an hour later. I just cannot fathom writing that soon after any kind of trauma. I can't say how I would have journaled about my car accident the day of, since I was unable to go upstairs and access my journal Athena until after my first surgery and hospital stay a few weeks later. But when I finally could, I didn't provide every single detail. Everything changes in an instant, Athena, I began, and went on to tell the general story and voice my pain and regrets at how, for example, the permanent job coming up at the place I was temping at, which I very possibly could have gotten, would now go to someone else. More details came out over time, in the following days, weeks, months, years, as I felt the need to record it. This isn't obviously something I thank God I did not experience personally. I only saw it on television, but I can still see it clear as day in my journal Royale after 9/11. I didn't talk about what I had been seeing on television and hearing about all day. It was only, I think, 3 or 4 sentences, that entire entry. My old journals are out in the garage, so I don't have easy, immediate access to them like I used to. But the first line was, "What a day it has simply been." Nothing about what had actually happened, because when you're big time dissociating from a trauma you experienced yourself or that you saw on the news, and it was just too horrible to admit this really is horrible, I'm just gonna repress my real feelings and dissociate, because that's the only way I can push forward, by kind of pretending it didn't really happen or wasn't really that serious. I'm totally lost for words yet again. Dr. Fraud had no idea how a real person keeping a journal many times would write the first entry after a shocking event like that, either personal or just watching or hearing about secondhand. She totally failed at pretending to be a psychologist. Ugh. What rape victim ends a journal entry about that event with, "Oh, chips. Why does life have to be such a pile of chips anyway? I'm not making that up." Or say her feelings are more hurt than her body, or already be thinking through how this might have been prevented with the mental wherewithal of someone many years removed from the assault, or admit she really doesn't know everything she likes to believe, since she's only a teen. What teen in the history of ever would say such a thing? And if Nancy truly did go to Catholic school till 6th grade, or as she calls it, Catholic parochial school, just how everyone talks about Catholic school, why wouldn't she already know what's considered a mortal sin? Committing rape is a mortal sin in Catholic theology, but not being raped. The nun she talks to on the phone says God will forgive her, as though she's committed any kind of sin. Dr. Fraud's total ignorance of Catholicism really pisses me off, and I'm not even Catholic. No normal Catholic living in the real world would spend more time worrying about whether she's committed a mortal sin and is going to hell after being raped than, dealing with the immediate shock, trauma, grief, injuries, and Nancy never goes to a doctor for any kind of injuries like pregnancy test, disease testing, nothing at all. You have to go to the doctor after you've been raped as soon as possible, and not showering or bathing or changing clothes at all, as Dr. Fraud later says, because semen is as identifiable as a fingerprint, and this girl never even gets medical treatment for, she would have had injuries if she really had been raped, and wouldn't you want to find out if, God forbid, you had STDs or pregnancy? I know you cannot immediately test for STDs or pregnancy right after. You have to wait at least 6 weeks in many cases, but still at least get the base medical trauma looked at first. Nothing about this is realistic. And speaking of PTSD, Nancy demonstrates more trauma and suicidal thoughts over having AIDS than being raped. That's just a thoughtless trope to give her AIDS and speed the plot along, not something to be dealt with and developed realistically. Nancy blaming herself and feeling like she led Colin on also feels like more of a lazy trope and gross oversimplification of such reactions than anything believable, and we never see any kind of PTSD at all. Like when someone's talking with Dory, an older guy, and I don't think he's up to any good. Dory should be like more worried and suspicious, but maybe I'm just being jaded and negative and mistrusting because of what happened to me. How dare I think about bad things. Mommy tells me to think about Scarlett O'Hara, even though she gets the famous line wrong. Scarlett really says, I'll think about that tomorrow. Mommykins says I'll worry about that tomorrow. And you have to be like Pollyanna, bounce back, smile, be a good little Molly Mormon as soon as possible. Nancy never has like any triggers. Triggers vary from person to person, and they frequently can fade over time, particularly if you actively engage with the triggers instead of like trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning. I won't engage with anything that even remotely upsets me or reminds me, because I really don't like this whole trend of deliberately avoiding anything that upsets you. You have to like deal with your trauma head on if you want to like heal from it. Maybe most people never 100% heal from like trauma and grief, but at least to be able to function a lot better and not constantly be like triggered and upset by everything. But anyway, Nancy never demonstrates any kind of triggers. A strange man suddenly across the street. Her heart is like pounding and she's suddenly, afraid. Or like Adam in Arizona. He puts his hand on her arm, let's say, or something like that, or stands too close to her and she suddenly starts having like a body memory, a flashback, and just her throat is constricting, her stomach feels sick, her heart is pounding, just all these different kinds of triggers, or like the time of day it happened, or the food she was eating, or the music they were listening to before it, like nothing like that. So Dr. Fraud like knew absolutely nothing about like legitimate psychological triggers or like PTSD or body memories, the real kind, not the woo-woo kind like Wikipedia insists on writing about. Like body memories are kind of like your mind is flashing back because you have a trigger and you're like going through all these like, physical reactions, like you're right there back in the moment, no matter how long ago it really happened. She just like really messed up yet again on depicting PTSD, or not depicting PTSD more accurately. What rape survivor would actually think her rapist didn't mean to do it, even when he left as soon as it was over without saying anything to her, and expect a call from him profusely apologizing? What? Why would she think he feels humiliated, heartbroken, foolish, silly, hurting, confused, suffering for doing that? Was Dr. Fraud a fan of Luke and Laura on General Hospital, with the insulting Stockholm Syndrome trope of a rape victim falling in love with her rapist? That's gross. Nancy is convinced they can repair their relationship and at least be friends, dear, precious, wonderful, bosom buddy friends. Dr. Fraud did love her long strings of adjectives until she's a bit older and they can officially date. Seriously. Survivors of trauma do often have a lot of conflicting thoughts, confusion, self-blame, and dissociation. Dr. Fraud depicts it in a totally unrealistic way, shaped by skimming through psychology books instead of working with actual patients. I can believe she worked as an uncredentialed youth counselor, since the morgue is obsessed with shunting people into endless callings, but she 100% lied about having a clinical practice. Real trauma isn't easily healed by your damn mother cuddling you, tucking you into bed like a baby, singing you a corny, cringy, babyish nursery rhyme. I will be reading that a bit later on, and taking you on a beach vacation. It's gradually, non-linearly healed by the old-fashioned power of time, talking and writing about it as you feel ready and able, seeing a real therapist for however long you need, possibly taking medication. Also, someone who doesn't want to talk about her assailant just doesn't do it. She doesn't dramatically write, in all caps of course, that she never wants to use his name or talk about him ever again. I've dumped my whole load of gagging garbage and the cops were beating me down. How trying to tell me, oh, you need to think more, help us more. But no, I'm not going to cooperate. I don't want to talk about him anymore. I'm not going to bring him to justice. I'll just let him go around, keep raping everybody and giving HIV criminally because, oh, I don't want to talk about that whole load of gagging garbage and pukey blank blank yuckity yuck yuck. Nancy doesn't even keep that promise because she does talk about Colin after that and flips back and forth between how she refers to him, Colin, throw up, yuckity yuck yuck, pukey blank, and all these other like babyish terms. She never gets any treatment for her PTSD, trauma from being raped, or persistent suicidal thoughts, or even the medical trauma from being raped, apart from the psychological trauma, and never gets tested for any STDs or pregnancy. But obviously she's not pregnant, but who knows, maybe she's had syphilis and gonorrhea and chlamydia this entire time, not just AIDS, like because they never tested her. They're just kind of dropped as inconsequential and dragging down the need to bounce back and be Pollyanna ASAP. That's not how any of this works. It grinds my gears that Dr. Fraud was allowed to get away with presenting all these books as real for decades. Nothing about them feels real. Here, this is starting on page 21, Nancy's account of what happened. I'm not going to read all of it, just going to go through relevant parts that seem like particularly unrealistic. Wednesday, April 25th, 1:30 a.m. Because, everyone who's gone through like a severe trauma, rape or not, has the presence of mind to note the exact time of date when they start writing. And as I mentioned, this is like barely over an hour after the assault happened. Blackness, cold, jellied blackness has settled in over the world, and I don't know what to do. Ellipsis, what to think, how to act. Ellipsis, who to call. It started out so wonderfully. Ellipsis, was that in another life? Another place? Another me? I'm so confused. Ellipsis, so alone. Ellipsis, I was going to say, so scared and hurting, but I'm really not, italics, feeling anything. It's weird. It's like I'm really, italics, not me anymore. Where have I gone? Who is this stranger who's writing? Will the real me, the happy, lighthearted, ditzy little girl me, ever come back? I really don't think that's how any trauma survivor would be writing about herself that soon after an assault. How did life go from total happiness and light to total darkness and whatever this horrible feeling that I'm feeling is? Let's start from the very beginning. As the song says, a very good place to start, and a very unrealistic thing to write or even think about so soon after a trauma. My grandma used to sing that to me when I was little and had a problem. Problem? In all caps. I didn't even know what a problem was then. Okay, ellipsis. Be realistic, uncluttered, ellipsis. Spit it out. You're talking to your journal like it's a real person. It's really creepy how all of her characters personify their journals. Yes, I name my own journals. I still have yet to give a name to my newest journal. I've had her since on May 27th. It's surprising I haven't named her yet. But anyway, even then I don't talk to them like they're listening. Oh, help me, Cecilia. Or, okay, Rita, is this right? Right. Oh, two girls can still be a gaggle, Athena, can't they? Yeah. Oh, help me, Prudence, or just whatever other, journal I was having an particular issue with. I never talked to them like they could talk back to me, or this was like a two-way conversation, or they were real people. It's just naming journals helps me to feel like they're like dear friends and we have some kind of like connection at some level, particularly because my journals average last like a year and a half or so, sometimes even a couple of years. So it's not just like, I quickly finish one within like 3 to 6 months. But anyway, like getting on with this, she gives a whole detailed account of the date when Colin comes over, because again, like what trauma survivor would have the presence of mind to like even want to like write about something like that in complete detail. And he starts becoming a little handsy, and I liked it, ellipsis, but I didn't like it too. He pulled me down on the floor and explained to me about our relationship, how it had grown from a brother-sister type thing, really it seemed always romantic, to a loving, respecting girl-boy thing. That made sense at the time, in that place, in that condition. Again, no teen said that. We drank a little more and listened to music and snuggled together, just loving and kissing. Dumb me, Colin even had to teach me how to kiss, but he was so gentle and patient, and even fun and funny about it, that I wasn't even embarrassed. He said in some movies people kiss like they're cannibals and they're trying to eat each other. What actual adult would say that about French kissing besides my bizarre ex who got freaked out the few times I tried to French kiss him? He hated kissing in general, barely even did it. That's a whole subject for its a whole other video, but I'm still like angry and hurt to this day. He was so like anti-kissing. I deserved a better like boyfriend who actually enjoyed kissing and like did it often and didn't need to be begged and didn't wait for like 2.5 years, over 2.5 years to finally do it. And so anyway, she mentions before this Colin turned off all the lights. So, oh, and again, no red flag bells are going off then. And getting back to this one, we giggled and I told him about the time Elle and I had watched an X-rated movie on cable when we were babysitting. I hope those children were asleep and not in the room when you're watching porn. That's a really, really disturbing thing to confess to, or even do when you're babysitting. What if they wake up and hear like the noises, or they pad into the room? Oh, I had a nightmare. I'm hungry. I wet the bed, whatever, and they see porn on the TV. That is really, really disturbing. Why would you even like admit that, or your mind would go to that? That's so wrong. It was gross and perverted and disgusting, but it was nice having someone mature like Colin to discuss it with. And she's not saying so much the porn is disgusting and gross and exploitative. It's the kind of sex they're having, because it's not Molly Mormon missionary lights out under the covers crap. And then she starts, oh, the next thing I knew, Colin had picked me up bodily and was carrying me into my mother's room. I struggled like crazy, ellipsis. I wanted to, ellipsis, but I didn't want to, ellipsis. Colin whispered I should, ellipsis. I cried I shouldn't, ellipsis. Colin dropped me down on my mother's soft flowered comforter. Yes, because you always think about the details when you're being assaulted. And I fought back with all my might. Red neon thoughts flashed through my mind, ellipsis. Committing fornication on my own mother's bed, ellipsis. I was still a good little Catholic girl who had been taught that sexual impurity was not simply a venial sin easily pardoned, and to commit it on my own mother's bed, ellipsis. Never, ellipsis. I wouldn't. And she just goes on and on about, she's like trying to fight back, and Colin is like, oh, don't you love me? Oh, mortal sins. Oh, snot is running down her nose because, oh, it's a mortal sin. Oh, no, Colin isn't really a rapist. He wouldn't do that. I won't even think the word. He couldn't be that. He's kind and thoughtful and, ellipsis, but he really is a rapist. No, I brought it on myself. I must have made him think, ellipsis. No, I didn't. He really didn't have a right, ellipsis. It was like he was somebody else. Not Colin, not sweet, thoughtful, kind Colin. He was a stranger who hurt me a lot all over, and he didn't even care. I don't know him. Maybe I never did know the real him. Yeah, because after 10 days you barely know anybody. But that's not so strange. I don't even know myself now. Oh, how I wish I had talked to my friends. How I wish I had stayed over at Elle's. I couldn't have kept my secret from her all night. At some time I would have had to creep from my twin bed to hers. Again with the pedantic details no one normal is really mentioning in a journal entry or even talking offhand, and tell her every single detail about the last few days, about the concert, about Colin, about my feelings. I'm so confused, ellipsis, and hurt. My feelings are hurt almost more than my body. Really? And it's pretty hurty. I could hardly walk to the bathroom, and she still gets no treatment from a doctor. Oh, chips. Why does life have to be such a pile of chips anyway? And then 3 a.m. she's back, writing about how she took all the rubbish out to the curb. She cleaned up everything in the apartment. If I just talked to my mom about Colin, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe she'd have known how to handle things. How would I know? Sometimes I think I'm so smart-assed, and I try to pretend that I know everything, and there's no way I can be wrong. But chips! I've only lived 14 years on this planet. I'm just a kid. Well, maybe I'm not a kid anymore. I guess now I'm a woman. Anyway, Mom probably wouldn't have known either, and she's talking about again, oh, maybe I should talk to a priest. Ella's just as naive and dumb as I am. Oh, she'll be angry and hurt if I don't tell her. Oh, I tried to go to bed again. I still can't sleep. I can't get in Mommy's bed because that's where it happened. She's back again at 4:20 and 5:10. Oh, I'm so tired. I can barely keep my eyes open. I can't go to school. They'll guess from my body language. She makes up a lie why she can't go to school. Oh, I used to be such a positive, happy little kid. Now it's I'm just an empty box of loneliness. And then this she's definitely feeling like trauma and like self-blame and PTSD, and it's like quickly resolved and just dropped like it doesn't even matter. That's just like so unbelievable and unrealistic. And then she talks on the nun to the phone. Oh, I committed a mortal sin. Like, you didn't voluntarily have sex, you were raped. And what, even in the Middle Ages, I don't think anyone normal would consider that to be committing a mortal sin if you're the victim instead of the rapist. Now it's 4 p.m. I can't believe I've slept the entire day away. I guess I'd still be asleep if Mom hadn't come in and awakened me. Ellipsis, woke me? Anyway, I was so glad to see her. I couldn't believe it. I hugged her and kissed her, and she cozily hugged me. What's cozily have to do with it? Like, who would use that particular adverb? On the couch, while she told me all about her trip and the wonderful deals she had put through. I put my head down in her lap, and she brushed my hair like I love to do for her. Gross. What teen girl is brushing her mother's hair? That sounds kind of creepy. A very, like, uncool thing for any teen to want to do, because, like, your adults and parents in particular are supposed to be, like, really uncool, not people you want to hang out with as a teen. And then here's the first goofy nursery rhyme. It just makes me feel so creepy just reading it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm so glad that you're alive. 6, 7, 8, 9. My little girl is doing fine. 11, 12, and then we get to start all over again. I'm going to assume that's a Mormon reference because this whole book is crawling with them. The hurt was beginning to heal, and I had thought it never would. Yes, the magic of Mommykins. I might as well call it the magical Mommykins trope in all of these, like, stupid books. Here it is at 11:30 p.m. I watched a couple of TV shows, but they were really dumb. It's funny about life. I used to want so much to be grown up. I resented it every time Mom did her mothering thing, of course, because you're a teenager. I hated it when she tried to tell me, show me, or example me. Example me? What does that even mean? And I told her so, sometimes in a not too kind or considerate way. Yes, because every teenager writes like that. Oh, I was being just so disrespectful. Like, oh, my mommy knows better. Now I know it. Now I want to be treated like a little kid. I want to be protected and coddled and told and asked and all the things I used to think I didn't want because Dr. Fraud was allergic to serialists with commas. It was just and. I used to pull away from Mom's hugs, be embarrassed about her efforts to give pats and squeezes. Now I want them desperately, need them life-savingly. When did I start stupidly thinking I was so high and mighty and know-it-all that I could be on my own, do it myself, that think that I didn't need her or anybody else to give me advice or guidance? Oh, what a dumb idiot I've been, and unappreciative, and irresponsible, and conceited. How could Mom ever love me or want me? Maybe she doesn't, ellipsis. Maybe nobody does. But how could they ever love me or want me? Ellipsis. I don't even love or want myself. And again, this girl gets no treatment for this, like, very, like, obvious, like, PTSD and, like, suicidal self-blame, like, depression. And here's Saturday, April 28th with the goofy nursery rhyme. Mom and I talked for hours. Then we took our baths. Then she tucked me into her bed like she used to do when I was very, very little. I felt so small and protected that all the other stuff didn't seem real. She sang to me about the mama kitty says to her baby, meow means I love you, close your eyes, go to sleep. And by the time she'd gone through the dog and the sheep and the mouse and the bee, another list without commas, I think I dropped into little kid La La Land. It was so comforting and belonging. This is not how real trauma heals, like within a few days, just because Mommykins sings nursery rhymes to you. Oh. Thank you very much for listening. Please leave a comment letting me know your experience with this fraud in general or other literary frauds in particular. Have you ever read this book or any of her other books, or just like books that were later revealed to be fake memoirs or diaries, or maybe authors who just lied about the credentials or something like that? Are you as like shocked and like lost for words as I am about how unrealistically this fraud depicts like PTSD and the immediate reaction to an assault or any other traumatic event, just like general like things you might think of that this video reminded you of, or maybe that I didn't mention? And I will have some more videos coming up about this book. The next one will be another general purpose like compilation anthology. So thank you guys again very much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.